I have to thank Ted right on top for pulling this together and with his trusted aide Noon. They put out the invitation to ASMP, and I'm thrilled to have to do another night with you guys. It's always very special to see dear friends, and I really appreciate that. One thing I want to say, we selected three, and I know a number of other people submitted, and we couldn't take more than three. So all those people, and you could let them know if they're not on, to reach out to me, and I promise in the course of the year we will get you in on another night. So and that's a standing invitation. So please do that. So I want to thank Pro Photo Daily, American Photography, Epson, Photo Shelter, and Archive for always being always helping on my end. I ask everyone, if you could, to please subscribe, and Jay will put it into the chat room, our YouTube page. That would be great. Tonight we have Greco, we think it's the third time that she's been on, so I'm looking forward to her presentation. And we have Maria Baranova, who we had to record earlier in the week because she's on a shoot today, which is the only excuse not to be live presenting, but I'm thrilled for her. And we're going to start with Terry Frishman, who will be presenting. But before we start any of that, Ted has a few words to talk about ASMP and what a great organization it is. So Ted, it's all yours.
Okay, yeah, I'm Ted Andresian. This is my trusted aide. Now I'm going to get it later for that, but I can blame Frank. Yeah, I'm the vice president for ASMP, known as the Fine Art Co-Chair. And as you know, ASMP is a national organization. I'm assuming that there are people from all around. I'm hopeful anyway. And we have quite a number of events coming up. There's the Finance at Actual that's going to be in the city. I think one of them is going to be virtual.
Yeah. It's going to be in Brooklyn, the one in person.
And we have every Friday Dear Curator with Pamela Tinnen and Joe Lombardo. And in April, it's not quite posted yet online, but it's in the newsletter. We have the chair of the department for the Entrepreneurship in the Arts Master's Program at SUNY Purchase. It's an all online program, and I'm pushing it now because I'm taking it and I'm finding that it's extremely helpful for me personally, because I never really studied those kinds of things. But I don't want to take too much time. Then, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, well, this year we're going to run student portfolio review. We have in a calendar fine art portfolio review, which is going to be in person. And where we got recently into the affordable art fairs. So actually ASMP artists are going to be presented in affordable art fair.
And there will be other.
Photoville is going to be also, we are going to present ASMP in Photoville. So we have a full range of programs. Whoever is not ASMP member, we encourage to join because it is very, it has great member benefits, and twice a year we're gonna have parties. We're getting back into in-person events.
Or at least subscribe to the newsletter. You'll see what's coming up. We have a number of events that you don't have to be a member to attend. So next month, we are going to be doing another fine art salon. 3 people usually show work. This is going to be a virtual one. 3 people show work. We discuss the work, and it's an informal type of thing. And but members can show, but anybody can show up and attend.
That's it.
Anything else?
Somebody wants to know, if you could put the link to the online class in the chat room, that would be good.
The actual, we can put the link to the
Susan Mueller needs that.
Sign in.
Do you mean the
actual or the master's program?
Suzanne, what do you need? Susan wants the online class, the link to the online class.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna log in.
Just I can put the ASMP New York.
For my computer.
Oh, okay. So the actual. I'll put it on.
You have it?
Oh, no.
Oh, you have it there, okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, I'm logging in then.
Okay.
Can you? There's that. Here. Got it. Okay. And I have it open. So I'm going to put the link to the events page and everything should be there.
Okay. Terrific.
And there are a number of national events that go on that people can also attend. If you go to the national page.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
That it, Ted?
I think that's it.
Okay, great. Again, thank you all the folks at ASMP. I always really appreciate doing this night with you guys. So without further ado, we start off with Miss Terry Frishman. You're on, Terry. Share your screen and off we go.
So hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm just moving people coming in off the front of my screen. I first of all just want to say thank you so much to everyone for making tonight happen and for all you do. Frank, projections is a great way for photographers to share their work, and you put so much time in to make that happen. I can't believe you have already 300 photographers there that we can all look up and do research with, as well as other people can apply. It's so great. So thank you, and Jay, for doing the tech work and having assisted me. Ted and Nune, who just were talking about ASMP this night, for me wouldn't be here without that. And I'm also, as are the other two guest speakers, Maria and Eri, are members of ASMP, and it's been an invaluable group. So thank you all very much. And I also look forward to Maria's presentation and then Eri's after that. So my focus for this ongoing project as a photographer is about shifting perspectives. It's about discovering things that we walk past and look at one way. And by the end of my presentation, I hope that you'll start to maybe question things that you see or you think. And like other people who have seen my work, I hope that at some point you will maybe even send me a text or an email with things that you're starting to notice as a result of this concept that I'm about to take us through. So this photo is called Dorian Gray, and I have photographed it many times. This was the first time I photographed it. And when I was re-photographing it, a woman stopped by who was interested as she was walking to see, oh, what's going on? But she didn't want to address or talk to me. And then she sees it and she says, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And she pulls out her phone and she takes a photo and she says, I live on this block and I've walked by this thousands of times and I've never seen it. And I smiled and I said, hi, I'm Terry. I said, that's what my work is about. It's about noticing things and seeing things that are in front of us. And my work is a metaphor for the overlooked. You may know the story of Dorian Gray. The picture of Dorian Gray comes from that Oscar Wilde novel. And so I'm also watching this photo change over time. So there's this marvelous quote that you may know from Minor White, who's also someone I've recently been studying. One should not only photograph things for what they are, but for what else they are. And that's really what I hope as we go through this evening and as you look through my work, or in the future, people who are watching this recording, that you will, I want you to be thinking about when you first see my photos, what's the first thing you see? And then maybe how things start to change and shift as you see them. And if you don't mind even putting in the chat comments, for example, what do you think you see when you see this photo? What do you think it's made of? My photos are not manipulated. I do crop and I do angle in extreme ways to get what I want. I do increase the contrast a bit, but this photo is called Wooden Kiss, and it's actually on a tree. And for me, a lot of all my photos really are very philosophical, and there's a lot of meaning in them, but it's also up to you what meaning you want to find in them. For me, this one is about everyone deserves to be loved. So another theme in my work, which is still all about shifting perspectives and discovering the overlooked, is that what we see isn't always what it is or what we think it is. So what do you think this is? Anyone want to put something in the chat? What do you think this is a photo of? Okay, Jay. A bag for produce. Cool. People kissing. I love it. I've got a lot of kisses in my photos. So yes, this is Linda. This is construction netting. And this is actually shadows. It is not a woman's body. Whoops. What do you think this is when you're looking at it? And what do you see? This photo, I call this photo Ascent Descent, and it's actually a subway platform. It's a reflection on the ground where the soapy water had come down the stairs, and for me, if you look, you'll see, like, I love when I see things that are talking to each other or creatures. And so in this case, there's a creature on either side of this imaginary staircase, and there's other things in it, and it's up to you how you want to see it. But it's this idea that, you know, who would think that this is on a subway floor puddle, that this imagery appears, and it's there and it's unchanged. More kissing. This is a sidewalk, but there's more in here too that I really love, and depending on how you want to visualize it and what you want to see. So I identify the elements, and I talk about the source. So in this case, this is a sidewalk, and I talk about, in terms of the elements, that this is sealant, and we have like granite. And one of the things that was interesting is I partner with a friend, an architect friend from high school, who tells me the different elements and what they are. And I was positive this was grout, and I was so excited. I had taken before a lot of photos, and I was ready to do a great grout series, and it turns out it's sealant.
So Terry, when you go out, do you always have your camera with you, or do you sometimes not, and then you make a note to come back here? I saw this. How do you work?
Great question, Frank. So first of all, I always have my phone, and I almost always have a small little Sony camera with me, which I also use. And more recently, I've been taking photos with both at the same time. And it depends on how much time I have. So I don't have here one, but one of my photos on my website, you can see, is called Swirling. And I actually just took more photos like that 2 days ago. And it's where the water was moving in such a way that I saw a bird in the foam. And I was like, ah, fast, because the way the current moves, it happens. And I grabbed my phone, because that was fast. The phone is fast. A lot of these photos are ephemeral, which means that, you know, in a split moment, things are going to change. And so what I see may not be there a little bit later. Some things change more over time, to your point of coming back. So like the Dorian Gray photo I showed, that was the first image I talked about. That's changed a lot, where the paint's peeled off the shoulder. There's been garbage next to it. There's been all different things happening. People have drawn on it. And so, you know, I do come back. It's rare that I come back to, sometimes I intentionally come back to something. A lot of times I forget where I was that I took a photo. But what's really fun is sometimes I'll take a photo and then I'll come back to that spot without realizing it's there. And I'll get so excited, like I just rediscovered an old friend. This photo is called Separated Souls, and one of the themes in my work, like I showed you the photo that looks like a woman, and Jay said nipples, and someone else said construction netting and onion bag. That photo, and this photo and others were part of what in my head I was thinking is almost like fake news, which still has to do with shifting our perspectives. What do we think is real? What isn't? So this looks like shadows on the ground, and it's not. It's actually where the snow melted, and where the I believe salt had probably been thrown from that street corner grocery store And I had just been waiting in the snow, stamping my feet, third morning in a row at 6 a.m., waiting online to get my COVID shot, which I didn't get because I wasn't of age and so forth. And I was walking home really frustrated. And so for me, there's so much meaning in this about people waiting online and what's going on and the idea of the separated souls. And there's a lot of stories that for me are here, but for everyone to be interesting at some point, I'd love to hear later, not today, but another time. Reach out to me, let me know what you think, we can chat. This photo is called Journey. And I mentioned earlier with Dorian Gray that people like that woman in that situation stopped the idea of new news. What are you photographing? People are interested and they'll ask. But what also happens, there's like three things. One is they're curious. Two, they're worried about me. So in this situation, I was like really angling and trying to get this. And I was like almost lying on the ground. And people are like, are you okay? Are you okay? Like a lot of times it's like really funny, the interactions with people as I'm photographing. So that was happening when I was photographing this. Another thing that happens is that people get really upset and worried, and anger comes out because they're typically people who are not documented. They're in garages or in front of buildings where I'm photographing, and they'll be like, why are you here? Are you from the government? Are you from corporate? I want to see your identification. And I'll have to try and assuage their fear. And I know it's just because they're scared. And so they're using anger and all this stuff. And then most of the times they'll be like, after I show them my camera or whatever, I'm on my phone, they'll be like, oh, okay, great, come over here, and they'll like, let me do it. But it's really almost scary, that initial reaction they have. But it's very, I think, prescient for our times. So another thing that happens when I photograph is I have a way of seeing it that I think is how it is, because that's how I captured it. But and as a result, I used to always sign on the front of my photos. But what started to happen a little bit is I've noticed that people want to look at things a different way. And I feel it's important that they should be able to. And therefore, if I sign on the front and I have the bottom being one thing, it might be that there's a better way for them in their home that they want to display it. So I, for the first time, put these three photos together for tonight, Frank. And I'm really excited about this concept because this is how I normally love the photo as Redbird. But this one becomes more like a Batman image. And this one is more like a graceful woman with beautiful hair or creatures together. And there's all different stories, even though it's the same image. And I have another photo that is now in Palm Beach where it's called Ocean Goddess, which is on my website and I think in my Instagram. And I always liked it where the foam is the profile of the face against a turquoise robe. But what happened was it also looks really beautiful in a different direction. And so I've stopped signing on the front and I let people tell me where they want me to sign if I'm in that situation. And I am also thinking in the future, I love this idea of collages and the idea of maybe putting, I always thought of triptychs as separate or all lined up, but I like the idea of putting photos together this way.
So it's sort of like in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean,
yeah,
and
and
see
it's
things so differently.
and it has to be for me, to let go of my vision, because my whole meaning of my photos is really, in terms of this ongoing project, a metaphor for the overlooked and getting people to see what they want to see, but also shifting from what they think to what others might see or think, and or how people, our belief system. And so in a way, I have to be willing to do this or else I'm not doing what I believe. So it's been a really interesting growth for me as well. So this photo is actually in the train station, and a lot of my photos are self-portraits. And I was told by a reviewer once that recently that, you can't have a lot of photos being self-portraits because, everyone's photos represent who they are. But for me, this one is called Between Stations because I was between my prior career in the food industry as a business consultant and educator, and I was going into the food world, into the photography world. And I was also on a train going from where I'd spoken in Baltimore to DC and then to New York, but to DC to visit a photography show of my sister-in-law's sister. And I was in the train station. I almost got arrested for taking this photo by the track. No one was there. They, like, three guys came. It was kind of scary, but this is actually, for me, like the food as well in here, almost like black and white cookies, and then almost me as this Egyptian person with a headdress as a profile. And it's other things too, but there's imagery within here, but it's a real self-portrait for me, though no one would say that's a self-portrait, but hey. I'd love people to vote. Can that be a self-portrait? Because I think it is.
Well, a lot of this, as I listen to you speak and seeing the images, it feels like Dolly.
Oh,
Like-
nice.
Like, you're seeing layers within layers within layers, and each of us, it takes a while to get there, but eventually you get there in whichever way you want, right? And whichever way your eye takes you.
Yeah, and I have a strong personality and I like to, I see things a certain way. And because I've been a consultant and educator, I love giving and helping, but I also need to let people see for themselves. So on one hand, my clues, which I'm going to get to at the end, are optional because I really do want people, and I know a lot of people just want to see it and enjoy it for what it is, and they don't care about any of this stuff. So I really do want people to enjoy it the way they want to enjoy it, which is also why I'm open to people turning things around. And on this photo, one thing I would love, if people don't mind getting back to me, either email me or DM me on my Instagram. I'd love to get help with the name of this photo because I have different ones in my head and I just am not there yet. And I love naming them because I see that as part of the artist's point of view, and therefore it takes it to another level. So I was thinking of orangutan and also orange hideout, and then there's some other ideas, but I really am open. So if people would like to be the one to put a name on here and help me, if it resonates and it feels right for me, I would be thrilled. So a lot of times, when I'm walking, I like immediately see something, and this is one of those situations. This one is called Can't Let Go. I don't know what you're seeing here, but this one is on the ground. And for me, this is a very austere person's portrait, and I call this one stone-faced. And I believe that some of my photos are actually archetypes. And in this case, this one is of a very stern person who knows it all and has pursed lips where you can't discuss things with them. And there was a person in my mind when I saw this that I was thinking about. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. So Terry, when you're showing these images, do you reflect back on the place you were when you took those images?
Many times I know where they are, or I kind of have the feeling where they are, but there's times I forget. And that's why I said it's so amazing when sometimes I'll walk like across the Museum of Natural History. I was taking this series, kind of the same subject, but I was focusing on secret language because of street paint. I'm sorry, utility paint is a secret code for like all the construction people of this is cable, this is, electricity. And there was this one photo, I've noticed that some of them are beautiful signatures almost of probably of the person who does it. And there was this one across from the Metropolitan Museum of Art that I happened upon a second time. And I was like, oh my gosh. And Sidewalk Kiss too, I couldn't find it. I thought I knew where it was, but I couldn't find it. And then I found it again another time. This one was on a wall, and this was one of those flashes. Like I'm walking by and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And I took out I don't remember what I took out, but I photographed it. And I was like, I can't believe I'm seeing a unicorn on the wall. And I call this one Unicornia. And this is actually efflorescence. And I know on one of your projections, Frank, there was another photographer who I believe did efflorescence under a bridge, and it was like a landscape. I think so, but I could be wrong. But
Yeah,
I
that could be brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
and I apologize if I'm wrong. And I was just at the Philadelphia Art Museum last week meeting, the curators can pull art for you, and it was an amazing experience. And one of the ones I pulled was from the quote also is Minor White. And this is the first time I had seen in another photo the use of the efflorescence. And I've done photos like this one, but not as beautiful with the moon. But it just, I love certain textures and elements, and normally people don't talk about them. And so I find that's why I want them in my clues. This photo is really interesting. There's another one on my website. It's interesting to me because it's the same spot where I photographed something else on my website that's called Got Your Back. And they're the same corner, and it has the same white gingham textured piece here, this curb, and this paint that's on the ground, but I have it where that curb is over this corner. And what happens is when this this particular photo I call Ghostly Chat, because this is like mud that's dripping that looks like hair on this face with the eye and the mouth for me, talking across this gap towards this ghostly creature over here. So it's called Ghostly Chat. But what's so interesting is if you look at the other photo, which is where this is in the center with another creature. It was raining, so there's raindrops on puddles. And that photo is all about friendship and having your friends back, and that you'll do anything for them, no matter what. Shootout at the end kind of thing. If you look and compare this, it's the same spot, but because due to climatic conditions, things are totally different, and you can create a totally different image, which to me, I just find so fascinating.
Yeah, Terry, do you ever think when, like, for instance, with a photograph like this, and this is, I guess, in my head of being loving documentary work, and photojournalism, would it be interesting to really pull back and give us this street corner to so we really see the context? Because you're right. I mean, this is almost like a painting itself. It would be for me, it'd be so intriguing to be 20 feet back and just to see it like this is the street corner on Madison and 48th, something like that. That's sort of an interesting. Do you ever do that just to document things like that?
I'm really glad you brought it up because I have done it a little bit. I'm not, on one hand, I can be extremely organized, but I'm not organized when it comes to where I photograph and what I photograph. I attended Neil Slavin's amazing presentation last night at the National Arts Club, and he talked all about the feeling and being in the moment, which is a lot of what my work is about. And when I start to think about context, and I do sometimes say, oh, I need to capture this, or oh, I want to remember, especially if I'm in another city. Like I took some photos that I've never shared, and where the location was so cool, and I felt like I have to know what that building is. It was those plastic liners on glass that they used to protect windows during construction, and they look like dinosaurs and all these animals all over the building. It's insane the way they're peeling and the wind's blowing them. And so I took that corner. Occasionally I'll do it on the street, but I know my husband always wanted me to do that. He felt I should have the two side by side, but I also feel that the big photo, where it's located, I kind of allude to it in the clues in a generic way, because my work is really meant where anyone can go anywhere and find these things and so on. But I may end up doing that, Frank, and you can say that you were my inspiration.
No, I don't need that. Just like every once in a while, it would just sort of be fun,
Yeah.
just to give us something.
Yeah, no, it's cool. So this was also, I think of this as a self-portrait of me. This is tar on the ground, and the paint that we talked about, this is both street and utility paint. And I saw this as a split world during the pandemic, with fingers or a brush pulling my hair, holding me back from going out and looking out this window. So this is open window, and I was envisioning like a mountain as I was seeing this, and for me it was sort of snow and how much I just wanted to be outdoors. This is also pandemic driven. This one is called Brain Fog. And I do see a lot of birds everywhere, and I don't know if anyone can see a bird in this image, but this is actually in a stairwell right around the corner from me. And once again, I go back and this will not be there anymore. Things change based on the weather conditions and everything. This photo has had a lot of exposure lately through ASMP. Thank you all very much. It was in it was in Aqua Art Miami, and actually a buyer that saw it in Florida flew in from Germany and said he'd like to meet me, and he just purchased it about 2 weeks ago. And lovely people. I hope that we always keep in touch. One of the nice things is when people buy your work, you really can build a relationship, and that's something I'm hoping to do over time with the people who want to have who respect, honor me enough by wanting my photos. So I really appreciate it. This one's also a bit of a self-portrait with the starry night, the iceberg head, but the bar cutting through the head. For me, this is really about a portrait of myself expelling into the water below, releasing and immersing and releasing and being ready to re-enter the world again and stand up and walk on. It's sort of that.
And good question from Suzanne. How big are the prints when you sell them?
Yeah, so they range upwards. So Nune actually printed this one for me. Thank you, Nune. Great job. What was it, 25 inches? I think, or 30 inches, 25? I think it was around there, but
Yeah,
it
it
was
was
larger
around
than I
30.
normally do. I normally try and keep it because I want it to be affordable. I really want my art to be available for everyone to purchase. So normally I use like 17 by 22 paper and 11 by 14 paper. And then, but I do have some that are bigger, and I've been told I should go really big. And then I have also a smaller size that I decided would be more accessible to everyone, which is just like a 5 by 7, like this is a 5 by 7, you know, and these are not archival once I put the 5 by 7s, but all my other photos are archival. So once I put it in the lucite frame, it's not. Stargazer, standing on the curb corner, waiting for the light to change. Person in front of me lifts his foot and steps forward, and I look down so I don't trip. And here was Stargazer, blew me away. Even the coffee stains. I go back, it doesn't look the same anymore, but I love the shooting stars this is from the line on the street. That's the street paint that tells people cross, don't cross, that says to a car, go, don't go, on the straight line with the asphalt. And when the asphalt's wet, it looks different than when it's dry. And for me, the leaf is also important as a leaf-like planet, which is ephemeral, like a lot of things in my photo, and moments later, or even sometimes a split second later, it's gone by the wind or a dog or someone else's foot. My last photo that I'm sharing now is orange sky, and another self-portrait. And this is one that just sold at the Upstream Gallery that Nune was talking about. I love, if you look carefully, there's like fibers that were on the ground that are around the neck, almost like a necklace of this creature, bird-like person. And there's just beautiful, I love the textures. And my work is really all about finding meaning in things that normally no one would look at, and hopefully shifting how we see, so that while we might foresee, oh, it's the ground, or oh, it's peeling paint on a wall, or oh, it's whatever, that we then might see that there's more to it, just like there is to each other. And that's really important to me. I mentioned, I'm not going to go through these now because I want to make sure there's enough time for everyone, but these are for every photo, I have clues with the title, source, and element. So like Dorian Gray, and then it's wall, and that's actually a garbage bin in front. Then peeling paint, black mold, scored stucco, and steel. So going through them, I'm not reading any of them, but I'm just going to say they range like from a tree to the construction sites, to the subways, you know, to sidewalk structures, corners, you know, they're like all over the place, curbs, walls, other kinds of puddles. You know, it's really fun. And the point is that no matter where you are, you can find something that you never noticed before and find the beauty and meaning in it. And as in general, this idea of seeing things that are all around us, there's actually a word for it. It's called pareidolia. And pareidolia is a Greek word that has to do with it's like looking at cloud formations, like what Stiglitz did also with his equivalent series, looking at cloud formations and seeing animals, otherworldly landscapes, fantastical figures out of the formations in the clouds. That's something we can do in the world around us. And it can actually cause us to shift and see not only, you know, a place that we go differently, but how we see differently. And it's like a muscle, and the more you use it, the more you develop it. So the average person, like evolutionary wise, could see like animals that were dangerous or people that were hidden in the jungle, and we had the ability to identify the outline of a face and make a pattern, a judgment that that's something we need to be aware of. But it's a muscle that can be developed so that you can see so much more. And I'm excited to see how much more I'm going to see in the future. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
No, that's great. You've opened all of our eyes to, we should look more. We
Thank
should
you.
stop and look. That's terrific, absolutely terrific, Terry. Thank you very, very much. And you'll check in the chat room when you're off now. You'll see, I mean, everyone just loves your work.
Aww.
And you'll also we'll put your website back in there so people can see if they want to look more and purchase or get into a conversation with you. That would be
Yeah, reach
that would
out
be
to me.
great.
I love to talk and also help people figure out what's best for them. And plus, it's so wonderful to hear, you know, what people like. So thank you. I will put that in here now. And should I get rid of
Yeah, stop sharing.
my sharing? Thank you.
Great, great. So now we're going to move on to Maria Baranova, who is busy tonight. She's shooting. She actually has a job, so that's great. And her and I had a conversation earlier in the week that Jay will put up right now, and we'll go right into Maria. Thank you very much. So I just want to say, next up we have Maria Baranova.
Yeah.
And the stage is yours, Maria. Thank you so much for doing this. Off you go.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me for this projections presentation. And thank you, Frank. Thank you, ASMP New York. Just few words about me before I show my project. This is how my usual work look like. So
Maria,
I'm
just one thing, Maria. On the left side, we can see your slides.
okay.
Maybe you go full screen, or
Right.
there you go. Now it's perfect. Great.
Yeah, so I'm a dance and theater photographer from New York, and this is how my work usually look like. I also have a separate project called Faces of Downtown Scene, which is me photographing same people that I photograph usually on stage, but off stage on a medium format film. And the project I want to share today is called I Name It Later. So basically, in March 2020, I was getting ready for a very busy year, pretty much booked 6 months in advance. And then on March 16, we went into lockdown and everyone lost job, including me. So we were not sure how long it's going to take, and everyone thought it's just going to be like temporary thing. But now we know that theaters were closed for a year. And so to not completely lose my mind, I started to photograph from outside of my apartment because we were not able to go.
And where were you living at the time, Maria?
Upper East Side, New York.
Okay.
And also photographing inside of my apartment, stuff
Oh,
that I
cool.
just found, and kind of tried to make sense of things by controlling them on this one little plate.
And were you by yourself?
I live with my partner.
Okay.
And after, I think it was 2 weeks after like that strict lockdown,
Right.
I went outside and continued photographing outside, also with the medium format camera on color. And it felt really bizarre because it was spring and full bloom. Everything was beautiful, flowers, but it was completely empty. It was like a zombie apocalypse, day after tomorrow. I don't know, it was unreal. And what I saw and how I felt didn't match. But I wanted to go outside and take as much pictures as I can during this time. So I switched to 35 millimeter black and white, and then it looked exactly like I felt.
Yeah, so explain how you felt.
I think it just all felt really unreal and raw. Like it was pretty, and it was ugly at the same time. It was like everything was like a movie set.
Yeah.
Because there was no like actors went on lunch break and the set is there.
That's a good analogy.
But they like never came back. And so I started to take those little trips. My studio is in Long Island City, so Queensboro Bridge was my first path. Everyone switched on bikes, including me. I haven't been on subway for a year. The first year of pandemic, didn't go subway, which is also bizarre. And I was just shooting what's around.
And so how was that for you to always be shooting people and in movement and all of that, to all of a sudden these still landscapes as a photographer?
It felt very natural.
It did.
Yeah, I did do some street photography here and there. And to be completely honest, I really like to photograph city empty. So this just felt like, oh my God, this cannot be happening. This is like ideal, but also so weird. And I cannot believe I'm living through it. And there was like all of those same places, like Reed's Diner, that's open 24 hours, but now only open for takeout and delivery. And then at some point it started to feel really lonely. Like everyone is kind of like afraid of each other. No one wants to be out, but it's so beautiful outside, but everyone is kind of caged in.
Mm.
And I just feel like this parallel reality where you're not sure if you're allowed to do anything. Then it was my birthday. I celebrated it via Zoom with my friends.
Mm.
It's also a very weird experience. Then I took my first car trip, first in 2 months, to Brooklyn. And the trip that was supposed to take an hour in normal times took 20 minutes because the streets were absolutely empty. It was like another unreal situation where you just drive and drive and drive, and it's like in a movie.
Yeah. You really can't believe that this is New York Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right? I mean, you just can't believe it. No matter how.
Yeah, I went to, one of the places I went to was Soho, and it was basically me and other photographers. There are so many photographers doing this. And we're all kind of like, hey, but also 6 feet apart. And then I realized that city started to have those messages to New Yorkers, from New Yorkers, and they were everywhere. On the screens, on the displays, on the little like cookie jars for residents of Soho in this case. And then I started to see those messages everywhere. Maybe not related to pandemic, but there was a lot of them, and they kind of mushed into that same narrative.
Yeah, and so as you look at this now, what do you look back and say, I wish I had gone over here also or over there, like any other places where you say, that would have been interesting to go see that. That ever, come across your mind?
Yes, but it did. But I also realized that my approach to it was really like living through it.
Mm.
I didn't want to make this as a sensation.
Mm.
So I never went to Times Square. I went to Times Square for work, and I did photograph there during night when it was absolutely empty in May. But I didn't photograph it on film for this project just because I didn't want it to be a sensational thing. Like, hey, look, empty Times Square.
So,
But
so there was a clear distinction for you. This is my life, and this is what my life looks like in my everyday world.
Exactly. But I did go to some recognizable locations because they were near me, and also because I wanted to see how different they look just as a person, like this, Central Park or Meatpacking District, completely empty. I was there just yesterday, and it looks so different right now.
So how do you have, it's an interesting question, I think. How do you have the mental discipline to put the two spaces separate from what your daily life is, and then from those sensational type images? How do you consciously do that?
I don't know. I just feel like, there are locations in New York that are very recognizable, like even this one, basically, Chinatown, this street is very popular. And I just feel like it was just my intuition that I should not do that. It just didn't feel right. And then I started to see images from empty Times Square, for example, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy I didn't do it, because it would just be one of those images in a sea of those images that everyone took.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel interesting to me. I'm sure there's tons of images of, empty FDR and all that stuff, but it was not part of my life.
Right.
This was part of my life. And, like theater district, Meatpacking District, one of the venues, Burshnikov Art Center, is nearby, and I've been to the street so many times before pandemic, and now it looks completely different. And then all of the stores start to board up, which completely changed the mood, because it felt like we were going out of it, with like outdoor dining coming out and people spending more time outside the buildings. Which was also completely bizarre. It like felt like apocalypse continues. And then in May, George Floyd was killed, and the city completely changed. It became like a war zone for a while. And I felt like cities trying to protect itself from protesters in a very bizarre way. Like, here's the, Apple store being boarded up for exactly what I think 5 days. This whole construction. And then all the messages started to appear on those boards, or like, very, very strange reaction, which I wouldn't expect. And, and the protests were nonstop for several months under my window every day. And it's funny because New York Marathon also runs there. So before it was like a huge amount of people running, and now it's, protests.
Right. And how was doing this project? Were you missing what you were normally doing? The color shots, the dancers, all of that, or did this just fit right into your mood? The way the whole, the whole world was reacting to the crisis. Like, was that a battle for you, or you just blended right in?
I think psychologically, I just started to approach to it as my personal theater, because it felt like empty set. I was just finding those artifacts of this lost civilization and trying to make sense out of it. But also dance kicked back really fast, because people can perform outdoors. and they don't need to speak. So there's no rehearsals that need to be without masks. And so I started to work pretty much from September 2020, not in the full capacity, of course, but everything that was outside was photographable. And in the winter, it went back to nothing because the theaters were still closed. So I continued doing this more and more, and it was still empty. It was still very strange.
And as you're shooting this and you're looking at, the images that you're creating, are you looking at it from an artistic standpoint, a social standpoint, a documentary standpoint? Because so many of these images are beautiful, fine art pieces, really stunning images. So how are you looking at them?
I think all of those things.
Yeah.
Because you can't really avoid, especially with documenting this particular time, you can't avoid social aspect of it. And you can also avoid that part of it being looking very interesting and even beautiful in the emptiness and the rawness of it. Like when in the winter, all of those outside dining structures became those little igloo houses.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, but it's also a desperation because restaurants were trying to survive. And it's also, a big part of constant discussion about where we're going to break them because they're ugly. So it's just this story, it didn't stop. We're still living around those things.
And you were satisfied as you were doing this creatively with what you were shooting and how you were shooting. Creatively, you were satisfied by what you were creating.
Yes, I don't know if I even approach it in that way, because the greatest thing about photographing on film, especially when you don't develop yourself, many of those photos I haven't seen for 3 months because the lab was closed.
Oh, that's true too.
So I would just go and I photograph, and I had a pile of film and I had no idea what's in it. And then later in the year, when lab opened and my printing lab opened, I went and I printed those photos in a darkroom, which was kind of part of also what to do when you don't have work.
Yeah, go develop.
Yeah. Yeah, and then in kind of like closer to the end of 2020, beginning 21, I started to work on the book with those photos. And I was really struggling with the name because every time I came up with the name, it just started to feel irrelevant because everything was changing so fast. And so I decided that, I will name it later. And now after 3 years, when I look at that, I'm thinking, this is the name. I'll name it later.
And have you created a book?
I have a dummy of the book,
Okay.
a few of them that I've been working on. It exists, but I'm still not sure if I want to self-publish it or submit it for publication somewhere.
Or a GoFundMe page or something like that, right?
Yeah, I was actually, when I was photographing and seeing a lot of photographers, I've been wondering how many books will come out of it, and many books came out of it.
Yeah.
And now when I go to the bookstores, I always look for them, and not to dish other photographers. I feel like a lot of them are exactly what I was trying not to do, which is, make it very sensational.
Right.
So when I see them now, I'm completely happy that I decided to do it the way I decided to do it.
And I have to ask, in what category, like where do you look in the bookstores for books on COVID? Is there a COVID section?
Interesting. Maybe there is now. The last time I checked was, I think, last summer. There was at least 3 books in one store that I saw. They were in like landscape architecture section.
All right. Okay.
They were not in the COVID section, but maybe this section will appear at some point.
Yeah. And I don't know. Never thought of that.
that's pretty much it.
Ah, that's great. All right. So what are you doing now? What are you continuing? Have you gone back to your dance? What's the latest for you?
Yeah, thankfully, performance world completely kicked back, and I'm as busy as can be. I still and been continue doing this project in 21 and 22. It looked different. Maybe it's not even about pandemic anymore. It's mostly about just photos of New York and different places and objects that I see, or maybe like meditation that I do once in a while, where I just take camera and go for a walk somewhere. And that definitely came out of those hikes that I did during the pandemic. So I don't have like specific goal. I just go and walk around and look at the light, look at what I see. And I went back to some of the places to photograph them, how they look now. And surely enough, they look different.
Right. People are in them.
So I don't know if I want to do like comparison before, after, and after. Maybe that's not the point of it, but I continue doing portraits now. I stopped for a few years because people were not comfortable to be inside without mask. And yeah, theater and dance is full on.
Beautiful. So as you look back on these photographs, now they're a couple of years old. Are you satisfied with what you created? Would you have done anything different? Do you embrace these images? I think I did a great job, or would you have done anything differently?
Yeah, back to your previous question, I felt like I wish I went to more places. I think I was feeling like I should go to more places even during when I was doing it. But in the same time, I didn't want to force myself for that same reason. Like, it's not, oh, this is this time, I need to, make best of it. Because I was also living through it in the same time.
Right.
And I was like, I didn't know what's going to happen next. I lost all of my work. I didn't see any of my friends. So it wasn't, I was in it. I wasn't, a person who just appeared, photographed, and left.
So do you think to put this together, a book or an essay or a diary, you need your words to give it context as well for what you were personally going through? Because your answer right there really is incredibly poignant. I was going through this myself. In a lot of situations with documentary photography or photojournalist, you get to be an observer on some level.
Yeah.
And like you just said, I was living it. So do you think there's value to put your thoughts to paper in corresponding with your images to bring it to a full context?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when I did the dummy, I think there's too much experience and information in this project to just be a big coffee book,
Yeah.
And that requires to actually be in there and maybe pick up some of the writing that I did during the times, because how I see it now, it's very different. It's a past now.
Yeah.
But I do have some writing that I did during the pandemic, and that might be something that can be included, plus just writing about it from this point of view.
Right. Well, Maria, I can't tell you how wonderful it was that you did this for us. I really appreciate it, and I'm also thrilled that you can't do it live, because that means you're working, which is even better. Right?
Thank you so much.
That's really good. But you have a standing offer to come back again and present more work, new work, whatever you'd like. That your work is really, really beautiful. I love it very much. I love the sentiment around it. So I'm sure all the folks at ASMP will say the same thing. that we all love your work, and I'm thrilled that you got to present.
Thank you so much for including me. This was really, really interesting. And thank you for your questions. They really made me think about stuff that I haven't thought about.
That's
with
great.
this project.
Very, very good. So all the best, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was her and I speaking earlier in the week, and I did make sure to wear the same shirt so that maybe I tricked a few of you that was still live. And I have kept the shirt on all for 4 days, so I wouldn't forget. So yeah, she was really great. And Jay will put her website and email in the chat room. So if you want to just drop her a quick note at some point, later on in the night or tomorrow, that would be great. Also, I want to thank Bruce Byers. Bruce Byers just subscribed to our YouTube page. So I thank him very much for doing that. That's very nice. And I encourage everyone else. So now we have my friend who's been on a number of times, Iri, and she has a great body of work, about her mom. And let's let her share the screen. And the stage is yours, Iri.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Okay, and do you see my presentation?
we do, but we see everything around it as well. So
Oh, okay, let's see.
I'm not sure if you're at full screen yet.
Okay. You see it now?
We do, but we still see.
You do? Okay, hold on one second. Let me stop. and
Okay, take your time. Take your time. Now we see your beautiful face.
stop. Now? You should just see the application.
Jay?
Yeah,
Yeah?
but you still need to go to full screen
Oh, okay, hold on.
for
Hold
the
on,
page.
Give me one sec. I was ready.
I think the shortcut is right next to 117. You see there, it's a little piece of paper with the arrows pointing up, down, left, right. Next one
Okay.
over.
Next one over, here,
That one. Try that.
it to one full page.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She's in an iPad. I don't think she can full screen.
Yeah, I think this is it.
Yep,
don't-
I think so too.
Okay.
Yep. Click that. Hide.
Okay, can you still see it?
Yes. Click on hide.
Click on what?
There on the bottom right hand side, there's an arrow pointing to the right,
I don't see that.
all the way in the bottom. Bottom of your toolbar on the right hand side. Bottom right hand side.
Down here?
Right. Right there. There's a little arrow pointing to the right. Click on that one.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, I don't see. We
Alright.
tested this earlier. My apologies.
No, you're both.
This one?
Oh,
No.
Try that one. You see there's a full screen arrow right there. You see the black bar in the bottom right hand side. You have a little box with the arrows pointing up, left and right.
All the way on the bottom right. Yeah, there you go. You were there.
It was? Here,
There you go. Much better.
There you go.
much better. Much better, they say. Okay, well, let's see. This is me. You guys are still seeing it full screen? Okay. Let me just ask a question. I had prepared my little notes that I didn't want you guys to see.
No, we don't see them, dear.
Yeah, neither do I.
That's not good.
Do you see this? Or do you still see the screen?
We see the screen.
Okay, good. Okay. I'm hiding my notes. Okay. So, thank you, first of all, to Frank and the projections team and ASMP New York. Very happy to present here again for the third time. It's quite an honor, I will say. And I hope my technical issues have not made it less so. Let me just minimize this. Okay, so my project that I'm presenting is called the Oneida Gals, and it's a personal project that was captured just this past September in 2022. And I'm just going to give you a little preamble to what the project is about. I wrote a little funny thing here on the left hand of the screen you can read at, at leisure. I just came up with it off the top of my head and I thought it was pretty funny. But essentially the Oneida Gals is a personal project focused on spending a week at a lake house on Lake Oneida, which is upstate in northern New York, in the Adirondacks. And I was up there with my mom and some of her oldest best friends. And the project came out of my relationship with my mom and how close she is with her friends that she's known, some of them she's known for over 50 years. And a couple of them live on the West Coast. Some of them are on the East Coast, not so close to New York City. And so they've had long distance relationship, for many of those 50 years, and had been talking during the pandemic about getting together and having this sort of like gals retreat, coincidentally in honor of their 50 years knowing each other. And the idea of the retreat was really, again, to reignite this long distance friendship and strengthen their bonds. Many times they had just only talked over the phone or text for years on end, to reminisce about their shared past and things that had happened while they were apart from each other, and to commiserate about current life, whether it's, work or retirement or, just getting through the day to day. So because my mom was sort of the inspiration for organizing it, I was invited to chaperone, and I was the only non-Oneida gal. I was the only one that wasn't part of the original friends. Being a kid of one of the friends, I kind of had this honorary position, and I took it very seriously. And I took on organizing for them and basically chaperoning and cooking for them. But also, of course, I brought my camera. So let me just do this.
And how old is everybody?
So my mom is 72. I don't know the exact ages of the women that you see here. I will talk a little bit about them, but I would say everyone's between, I would say 71 and 75, I believe. And then there were two other friends that were part of the original group of 6 that were planning on being there, and then had some health problems really in the week leading up to it. And so they couldn't be there. So they were kind of there in spirit. So before I talk about the actual project that was the photo shoot that came out of that week, I just wanted to give some context of who these women are for me. It's going to make a lot more sense as to what I was looking for in photographing them, what I wanted to showcase, and why ultimately it was so meaningful to me. So I grew up in the 1970s and 80s in Queens, New York, and this is Rita. She's my mother, and she did quite literally make me, and also figuratively. When I was a kid, I was surrounded by very powerful, intellectual, and independent women. And these were my mom's best friends. They were like, I described earlier today, like a sea of aunties, just having these women that were my mom's age and her sensibility, and that knew me since I was a baby. I think, I felt completely safe around them. And I had a sense of them as being, completing the orbit that my mom was sort of the centerpiece of. And as I got older, not even that much older, I was growing up with their kids. And I felt like my youth and growing up was under the gaze of these aunties. So these are some of her girlfriends. And on the photo on the left, you can see it's just this. I was so happy I found this photo. All of the photos I'm going to show just in this first intro are from my mom's photo albums. But you can just see, this was like such an incredible group of women, coming of age and finding themselves in the world at such a pivotal time.
Where in Queens, Ari?
Well, I was born in Flushing, and we lived in Flushing, and then we moved to near Queens College and then Kew Gardens. And then my parents divorced very early, and so then my dad lived in Kew Gardens Hills, and then he moved to Greenpoint, Brooklyn. So this is my mom, Rita, I mentioned, and excuse me. She had a very eclectic mix of friends, very adventurous, incredible personas, strong women, independent, loving, sensual, fiery women that surrounded me. And this had a huge impact on me. And many of the women that are in these photos are still in my life, and many of them were at the Oneida House. So as a young person, I was very, I would say, very impacted on a very deep level by these women in my life. You know, my mom was a very young parent. She was in college. A lot of her friends were the same age, and they were essentially, you know, typifying the era of bohemian idealists, very sexually open and adventurous, fiercely independent, yet they were planning for normal futures and normal lives. And they were strong-willed, but as I call them, tender to the touch.
Who took all these photographs? Was it one person or just a collection?
It's interesting because, you know, when you start looking back at your parents' old photo albums, because I think nowadays I wrestle with that. Like as a photographer, I don't even make photo albums anymore. And it's something that I really miss. I think there was a combination of my mom and then her partners taking photos, but then I think the women took photos of each other. And then probably when you were at an event, the camera got passed around. You know, so I think there are sometimes like on a roll of film that my mom would have maybe some of the photos she took, but then, you know, maybe the camera just went in other people's hands and they just kind of captured the whole event 360. Then other images like here, these are some of my favorite images of the Oneida gals, my mom's friends. This on the top left, and the nude pregnant one is Rosa. And then bottom right is Mo, and you have Louisa with one of her two sons on the top right, my mom with my older sister in the center. So it was definitely a combination. I think they also shared images with each other. And then just to kind of wrap that up, I think the thing that had really such an impact on me in terms of these women in my life were, even as a little kid, they could be kind of intimidating and sometimes unpredictable. You know, they were very wild. They were often really loud and raucous, but they were wise and they were soft and they were vulnerable and they were sensual. And I think it was also important to me that they had their own kids and that they had their own families, and our families were kind of intermeshed, and they had husbands and lovers and they had divorces. And, you know, I like to think of them as they were very vibrant, but they were sometimes broken, but they were always heroic. And I never saw them any other way. So that's like a pretty good picture of these women that shaped me. And that's me and my mom and my sister. So that gives you a little backstory of like the intensity of these women and the effect that they had on me. And then obviously the intensity of the relationship that my mom had with them. And then 50 years later, we're on Lake Oneida in 2002. So these are, excuse me, a little kind of behind the scenes. These are just images that I took during, I have a frog, sorry, that I took during the week. And you can just see these candid snapshots of them enjoying meals together, enjoying the lake, having time, relaxing on the porch, having a fire. These are like obviously the essence of the time that they had during the week. And I love seeing these as kind of a prelude to the photo shoot. So I wanted to just give you a little preamble about the photo shoot. I've already told you a little bit about what we were doing there. And before we did the photo shoot, we had decided ahead of time before the trip that we would do a photo shoot. But up until that point, me being there was not just as a photographer. Like I said, I was really kind of a chaperone. And my goal was to create a space for them that allowed them to have as much time as they could with each other. So, you know, I did the cooking so that they could have more time with each other. And I helped organize activities so that they could be more one-on-one. And through it all, we got to experience laughs and dancing and games and stories. And, you know, a lot of tears were shed, a lot of sharing of fears and talking about hard pasts and forgotten dreams. And that was really hard for me to put into words. So we needed pictures. So this is the actual photo shoot, and this is the project that I nicknamed Oneida Gals. And it was really a culmination of partly my mom's idea to do kind of like a dress up photo shoot. And then the gals really got into it because during the pandemic, I had been doing a lot of personal work, doing shoots with myself and then friends and family. And my mom had become one of my muses, and we did a couple of things dressing up, and her girlfriends saw the photos and they were like, oh my God, we have to do this with Erie when we see her. So my mom brought these vintage aprons and these headscarves and some jewelry and asked everyone to bring makeup. And they dressed up, kind of ironically, as if they were 1950s housewives. And it was really hilarious because these women were anything but 1950s housewives. They were raised by stay-at-home moms, you know, in the 40s and 50s, but they had all gone their own way, you know, really carving out their own path and in a very unconventional way. So them playing dress up in this kind of stay-at-home mom, housewife vibe was I mean, it just, they couldn't stop laughing, but it did give them a sense of kind of like that duality of being raised as a woman, you know, in that generation as well. And so there was definitely a play on paradox.
And anyone have pushback on that, to do that?
No. I mean, I don't know if the other two ladies that were supposed to be there might have, but, you know, I'll tell you what the original pushback was. My original idea was I wanted to do a full nude photo shoot with the women. And I mean, I really wanted to explore this sense of, you know, women's sexuality later at life, and also like how women, for the most part, tend to feel really comfortable around each other naked because we do, you know, change in front of each other, and you have sleepovers when you're young girls, and, you know, we talk about our bodies because we have all these things going on all the time. And I love the idea of having 6 70 plus, you know, age women doing this sensual nude photo shoot, you know, kind of like a, you know, like a Romanesque type of thing. And there was some like, we'll see about that kind of thing, although they trust me. But then my mom came up with the idea of the aprons and the headscarves. And so everyone was all in. So it was kind of a funny aside. But that being said, you know, one of the most special elements of doing this, and, you know, this is just a little sampler page to show you some of the shots, but one of the most interesting elements of doing this was me being there, actually watching them get ready. You know, because here you have these women that are like grandmothers and mothers, and, you know, they've had these rich full lives, and then, you know, cram 4 of them into a little bathroom in a cabin, and they're doing each other's makeup, and they're giggling, and they're, you know, fixing their hair. And it was like being around a bunch of schoolgirls. So for me, it was like this really surreal experience that was, you know, as precious as the actual photo shoot that we were doing.
And Eri, at any point, did you think of getting any audio of them, audio, video? And you know,
I did think about it. And I actually, I actually said to my mom, I believe, like, damn, I wish I had like a, you know, a video person here, because I was so busy, you know, just capturing what they were doing and then, you know, setting up for the, you know, quote unquote photo shoot, that I just felt, and also wanting to be part of it. You know, I didn't want to be a complete onlooker. I wanted to also be laughing along with them and joking along with them. So I kind of wished that I had, you know, like an extra set of hands, you know, if, you know, one of the other kids had been there or something, it would have been great. But, you know, I also feel like at this point, it's kind of bound to happen again. They're already talking about next year's lake house. And so I feel like you know, there will be an opportunity to do that again. But I do wish that I had captured some audio and video for sure.
you know what you could do is you could, like show each one of them, 15 or 20 images just to sort of motivate them and then talk to them. And maybe that becomes background for a presentation like this.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
In retrospect, when they look at those images and they say, God, I haven't smoked like that, whatever it may be, there's something, that you could probably pull together, even if it's not your sweet spot, some, person who does videos, we could do this, we could do that, do a multimedia piece. That could work too, I think.
I think so too. And there's nothing wrong with, adding layers after the fact. I'm definitely exploring that with a different project with my grandmother right now that I just started, and realizing not everything has to be done in the moment, and sometimes, you can come up with these layering ideas afterwards and add them back in. So I think that is a good idea. So let me move on. Not that I don't love the questions. I want to just be mindful of the time. So I just wanted to give a little bit of introduction to my main characters here through their individual portraits. And to start off with, when I was posing them for the different parts of the photo shoot, I knew that I was going to do individual portraits, and then we were going to do some group stuff and then some other playful stuff. And I especially wanted to capture their unique personalities. So even though they're kind of like lumped together as the Oneida gals, and even though they were kind of dressed in this, similar costuming, I did want their personalities to come through and allow them to be, defiant or pensive, spiritual, gleeful, silly, whatever was happening to them in the moment, and allow for that organic expression of their personality to come through, but then just try to orchestrate their body language and where they stood. We were doing most of this on the porch of the cabin. So that was a little bit just about the posing and the portraitures. And so this is Rosa. She is, in my mind, I see her, and I'm going back also, I wanted you guys to see who these women were to me when I was very young, because now I also have them, 50 years later, looking at them in a different way, and yet they're still the same. I realize that I see them very much the way I saw them, 40 or 45 years ago. So Rosa, I would describe her as spiritual, sensitive, sensual, elemental. And by that, I mean, I feel a connection with her between like wind and earth and water, and very stoic. And it's not that she's that all the time, but I feel like that's her essential energy. And then this is Mo, who I would say, is definitely one of the most radical. She was always the most defiant and forceful women, a little bit dangerous, a little bit risky, very sexy and quite wild, and yet solid. Like Mo was the one that I turned to most often when I was younger. And then this is Rita, my mom. And Rita is intuitive, generous, wacky, creative, familial, and a uniter. She is definitely the one that brings people together. And then this is Louisa. And she is steady and calm, dependable, loving, grace, and wisdom. And you don't have to, anyone that's looking at these does not have to see them as such, but that is how I see them. And I do feel like the images, the individual portraits I captured, and especially when you see them all together, definitely conveys at least what I saw in them, if not, what they see in themselves.
And is Rosa on tonight?
Rose is on, and I believe Louisa is on. I
All
don't
right.
know if Mo made it on, and my mom is on.
Oh, that's great. Good. It's great to have you ladies with us.
Yeah, I'm
Really
interested
great.
to hear their questions.
Or their answers.
So the group photos that I did a few group photos, and my intention with the group photos was to pose them as though I would pose athletes or models. So, my normal job is I have a photo and video company, and we work a lot with sports people, athletes, and personal trainers, and all kinds of other lifestyle people. So I really wanted to pose them in a way that was, athletic, that gave them stature and gave them space, but at the same time, allowed them to appear as they were individual characters, but also as a team. So I kind of see this like an Avengers type of layout where, they feel like they're a troupe, but each one has a different character and a different role. And then we did a little bit of variation on this, where my mom's dog snuck in. So I just think that's the funniest one when I look between the two. And then you get Ziggy in there, who is the only the only masculine person on the trip. And then we did some other, I didn't include all the photos because there are quite a lot, but we, they like slung their shoes off because then they did this impromptu dance. And then we started doing some more portraits that were a little bit more intimate. So I'll talk about those. So the one-on-one portraits, whether it was a single or two of them together, here I really wanted to create a visual sense of these strong women as lifelong friends, showing their organic intimacy and the chemistry between them, even after all these years, which essentially boils down to this history that they have. And what was really important for me, maybe more important for me than them, I don't know, is to showcase how older women, aged women, are so beautiful in their physical form, their strength, and in their age, which to me connotes experience and wisdom. So, one of the things I think about a lot as a photographer and also as an image consumer is how much we shy away from showing stages of age, especially with athletes and models and people that are supposed to look young and healthy and vibrant. Even the slightest sense of a wrinkle or a little flab is considered to be like, you want to avoid that and minimize it. But in this case, I really wanted to let them be completely themselves in their bodies and feel beautiful doing so. And in that way, I didn't really manage them a lot. I didn't overpose them. I kind of let them move around and just offered some suggestions, here and there to make like the composition work a little bit better. But I think, for me, it was really important to show them as they are, very much unretouched, but gorgeous, healthy, vibrant, loving, intense women. And I think that that's something that, we don't show enough of, especially this kind of intimacy between them and this love that's, very non-competitive. And then the next part was just a little hand project I did that came about. It was more like, cutaway shots, because as much as I love their faces and their smiles, I just was taking photographs of them and I was realizing how much I love all of their hands. And for me, I've always had an appreciation for hands. In fact, when Jim and I are working together, especially with athletes and mechanics and chefs, we always tend to focus on their hands because their hands tell such a story of what they do. And in a similar way, I was really noticing, oh, wait a minute, like your hands have as much character and story and life in them as your faces. So we did a few hand shots, and I really felt like this tapped into something that was very intuitive for me. I've been taking photos of my mom's hands for years as, time has gone on. Plus, she always wears, all these rings on every finger, and she's got all these bracelets that, each one comes from a different life experience, a different ex-husband or boyfriend or trip or journey, or from, a friend. So her hands literally tell the history of her life. And I feel like seeing all these women together, just seeing the four of them and their hands, it was also part of telling the story of everything they've been through. And then the last part of the photo shoot that we did was this kind of like extended remix on this idea of if they had been housewives. So my mom had brought along different face masks. And so we put them on, and I photographed each one of the women with a face mask on. But instead of their lively outdoor portraits where they were being themselves and being playful or looking out at the water, I staged them a bit more in a kind of forlorn, out of place way, so that they kind of come across a bit like Stepford wives that have been misplaced. Instead of being in these like lush villas, they're in this kind of 1970s rundown cabin looking like, what the hell are we doing here? And these ones are, they're different. They're obviously like capturing very different elements of their personalities, more like they're shells of themselves. So I thought that was kind of an interesting play on the housewife idea. And then lastly, I just wanted to end on some behind the scenes before I wrap up. These are some of the images I took while they were getting ready. You can see them all in the little bathroom, fixing their hair and their makeup and helping each other, goofing around. And this to me was really special. I mean, this was actually the time, Frank, that I wish I had been able to do video and record their conversations, because it was just so wild. I mean, these women had done exactly the same thing 50 years ago when they were all, college age, probably getting ready to go to a party. And so there was definitely an element for me watching them that, even though when I was younger, I thought, well, when you get to a certain age, you're an adult and you just adult. you don't act like a kid anymore. You give up some of the things that you did as a young girl. But seeing these women in their 70s really just act like little schoolgirls and get giddy and fix each other's hair, it really it cemented for me that, you really are always who you were when you were little. You age and you become wiser and all these things, sometimes less happy, sometimes, whatever, but there is still this little girl inside each of these women. And I love seeing that, because that was also something very timeless. So this is one of the outtakes. So I just wanted to say, for me, what's so meaningful about not just making this work and sharing it with all of them, but being able to share it with a wider audience, because I really think that the message of the universality of women being beautiful at any age, even especially at older age, is something that I think is appreciated maybe in some other cultures, but certainly not in our American culture. And, for me to capture these women as I've always seen them since I was a little child in their different personalities has been really special and meaningful. And, I think being able to capture them as complete, complex women, not just as sort of like an archetype of like, what does a woman over 70 look like? What is she supposed to be doing? What is she supposed to be wearing? For me, it gave them so much more depth and humanity to showcase, like, this is what they do when they play. And so I really feel honored that I was able to be there with them and, to see this moment that they had together with all my aunties. And I want to continue that kind of celebration of all the aunties in the world and the women that we know, but maybe forgot who they were and who they have been. So with that,
Did you light these, Uri?
no, so I didn't bring any lights, but I have one slide to show you. This is my last outtake slide, because I want to thank my production assistant, Ziggy Stardust. Here he is holding the bounce. This is the only light I had. And I just brought a reflector, which when we were doing the individual portraits, I had the other ladies hold the reflector for me on some of the other women. But when we were doing like the group shots and the dancing, obviously I couldn't and I rigged up this little thing on a rocking chair with our dog holding it in place. But that was the only lighting that we had, that and just the natural light of the environment that we were in.
And are all these photographs released?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. So let me just say before, if there's any questions from you, Frank, or anyone else, just thank you again to ASMP and Projections for having me again. All my contact information is below, and I certainly am super excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, everybody in the chat room loves it, but let's hear from the ladies. Rosa, so who's got the biggest mouth of the bunch? Or is that a tie between the four of them?
That's Rita.
You think so? I'll bet you, Rita. I'll buy for it.
All right, so Rita's got the biggest mouth. That we've gotten that straight away. That's good. So,
Where is she? I wish I could. I don't know how to see everybody.
Yeah, I can't even see myself in all these boxes.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, we can hear you. We can hear you,
yes,
Mom.
we hear you loud and clear.
Well, I'm just so proud of my daughter Erie, because she is just immersed herself in the arts, all the ways that I wished I could have done if I hadn't gotten married and had kids so early. So I'm so delighted that she is working as a photographer, and her work is stupendous. What can a mother say?
Yeah.
But she brought so much fun to my friends and I this weekend. And because Erie had used me in some of her other photo shoots, one of my friends, Louisa, said, you know what I want to do this summer? I want to do one of those shoots with Erie.
That's right.
So that's how this all came about.
And how long has it been since the four of you or the six of you planned on being together? How long has it been?
Long time.
Oh, I hadn't seen Louisa probably in, well, maybe
About-
8 years, maybe longer.
No, it was.
Rosa
It was
had
about.
seen-
It was. Yeah, it was about 5 years ago. Rita.
I hadn't seen
Oh,
you,
okay.
it's in 40 years.
I know.
It
I
had been at least
know.
40 years since I
It's
saw you.
40 years.
It's just.
Wow.
It's been such an amazing thing, and I want to say, Erie, next time we'll defrock. And
Yes, we will. We'll all go nude. We'll definitely
Oh,
go
wait,
nude.
so that is actually, Rosa, that is on tape now. You guys are doing this nude.
I had no
All right.
objections. It was cold.
That's
I
a
have
promise,
visions
right?
of us.
I gotta tell you, I live
Yeah.
in Florida and I can give you a studio, my house, and you guys can parade around nude all you want, as long as you're free to film it.
Oh, I just have visions of us running naked down the dock with all sides breasts flailing in the wind, and our bodies just, I think that would be so wonderful. Gray hair and all. I just love it.
I think Louisa now is the art director, so we have.
Yeah. Well, she really did touch on my original idea, which was just,
Yeah.
seeing these women whose bodies I've, been acquainted with, since I mean, because most of them saw me being born, I mean,
Yeah.
they knew my mom before I was born. So,
Are
there
you-
was like
are you-
there's a
Yeah,
sense
are
of
you
trust.
Are you the first child of all of this group of women?
No. So I have an older sister, and Louisa has a daughter who is, I believe, between my sister and I.
Yeah, Asia is 53 now. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's my sister, then Asia, then me, then
Yes.
Rosa had her son, and then
My son's 42.
yeah, and then Louisa had 2 more sons, and then Alice had her son, and so on and so forth. So
So would the idea of going back to Queens, back to the neighborhood, be something that you guys would be interested in doing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there a pull? Is there a pull? There to go to the neighborhood and the pizza places and where your first kisses were and all that.
that might be some baggage.
Okay. Don't tell me anything happened at Shea Stadium underneath the
Oh, my
No, but
goodness.
I mean, these women were like caught up in anti-Vietnam War protests and love-ins and sex-ins.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, sections. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, we were hippies. We were definitely.
Yeah,
hippies
we
at
were
the
into
time.
sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Rock and roll. That's right.
And actually, I first met
That's-
Louisa because we were in a protest at Queens College.
Oh, we got arrested. That's
Arrested.
right.
And I spent one night with Louisa at the Women's House of Detention sharing a cell.
We were these young, we were pretty innocent, these young innocents, and we were hovering in a corner in the women's house of detention while there were women screaming. And I mean, it was pretty awful.
Erie, this has to be
God.
filmed or recorded or something.
Well, listen,
There's too much stuff here.
I spent all week with them before the photo shoot, and they were telling stories I hadn't even heard. And the funniest part was, I mean,
Well, now-
they're in their 70s now, like they don't all remember things. So some of them were telling stories that other ones didn't even remember. Like, it was pretty wild.
So
Oh, that is wild.
if each
That
of
is
if
rough.
if each of the moms could think of one or two men from that period of time, and we had them on,
Oh, my Lord.
how would that be?
It depends.
Oh, my goodness.
That would
I
be
don't-
like being in purgatory, if not hell.
If not hell, okay, good.
Oh, my goodness.
There's your conflict, Erie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
That's
Oh,
great.
but what a wonderful time we had. And Erie, you were old enough now to hear many of those stories. So, it was absolutely, and you took such wonderful care. Every meal was made with such love and such precision of beauty. Everything was just lovely, and I can't wait. I can't wait. Rosa and Rita, I miss you guys so much.
Well,
let me ask you-
I'm gonna be in New York in
Good.
May. Yeah.
Oh,
We're
good.
gonna
I'll
look
see
for
you.
another house. We're gonna go look for another
Okay.
house.
Ladies,
Okay.
was there ever a moment, ladies, where you needed just the four of you to be alone, where we didn't want Erie there? We want just the four of us for like any kind of moment that I want to rectify this, or I want to say I'm sorry about that, or any kind of moments like that. Erie was with you the whole way, huh? That's how.
Yeah, I don't think
Well-
there's any baggage that I know of.
Yeah, you're right.
We
Rosa.
really had no secrets from each other.
There were
Right.
some-
And it's not only that, as Erie said, she left time enough for us each to go 2 to 1, one-on-one. So there was nothing like that at all.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there were times when I would just say like, okay, I'm gonna prep for dinner. And you guys, so they would like take walks or sit on the deck or go down to the water. So each one of them had one-on-one time. And that was, like I was not a fly on the wall for that, so that was really special.
And I got a diagnosis from Rosa, who is one of the best nurses I've ever heard of, that I had to go get a hip replacement, and I'm finishing my 3rd week of having a hip replacement. So Rosa, thank you, darling.
You're welcome, darling.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess what we have to do is you're all invited back.
Thank you.
Oh, my
I mean,
goodness.
you know what? This could be an annual or biannual event where, the Olita ladies, come back and give us an update, and we see more and more footage. You guys are absolutely wonderful. I think Stefan Fall could just put it right. You all put a smile on our faces.
Oh,
That's
Thank you,
really,
Erie.
really nice.
thank you.
Because I
Thank
think
you,
all of
Erie.
us with our moms and our dads have a little piece of this growing up in Canarsie. I mean, you four are like the women that were part of our lives as well. So that's
Yeah.
really beautiful. Great
Aw.
job, Erie, bringing.
Thank
and
you.
it's really great that you all showed up.
Beautiful,
Really nice. That's really,
beautiful,
really nice.
Erie. Erie, I love you.
It's a Kanahara. It's a Kanahara.
Kanahara is right.
It's
Oh, God, that's
a
wonderful.
very, very beautiful thing. So
Thank you.
it's really nice. So with that, I want to thank everyone who came in, and Terry for presenting, and Maria, who's not here, presenting, the great folks at ASMP to put this whole thing together. This was very, very nice. And I don't know who to give the last word to, because usually that's a sacred spot. But I think, being that Louisa likes to talk the most,
Oh,
Louisa, don't tell
I
me
think-
you're gonna get
No,
shy now.
no, I'm going to break out in song is what I'm going to do. No, I'm not. I feel like it, though. I feel like this is just such an honor. It's just such an honor to be part of knowing someone for over 50 years. And I saw Erie as an infant, and Rita, when we went before the judge.
Are there
we
any
wore these
photographs of that? God Almighty!
Oh, I wish. I don't know, but that we were like quaking in our boots. And he let us off with, of course, a sentence because we were young and kind of stupid. I really went to the rally. I believed in what we were doing, but it was more about the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, And it was just, youth to be with someone when you're young and see the stages of life. And it's an honor to be included in this show. And Erie, you are magnificent.
And I wanted to say that Judy Unger has put me squarely in my place. She writes, from another 70-year-old lady, leave the men out. So thank you, Judy, for putting me in my place. I appreciate it very much. I can't tell you how much this was such a special night with all the three presenters, and everyone should just continue. Terry, continue on your work. What you're doing to inspire us to see things right under our noses. It's really great. Erie, great presentation. And to everyone that showed up, thank you very much. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. I really could use that. That would be great. And we have the ladies all have a standing offer to come back anytime. We'd love to have you. And Erie knows that this platform is partially for her. In
Yes.
some ways. And thank you all very, very much. It was a great night.